Right, I'm going to hit live. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting momentarily. Oh, dear. Hello. Sound video okay? Fantastic. Means we can start. Alright, I'm ready to go when you are. Blur background looks messy for me, especially with the earbuds. Yeah, it's just the way it's going to be this week because my office has loads of crap in the background. I'm now recording as well.
Hub 2SG2 apparently was announced, and we'll talk about what's new with that and when you can probably not get one because they're like, 10 grand or something like that. And unless you're a small business or a large business, you'll probably never see one. But we'll go over that. Teams 2.0 launches, something we talked about last week as we anticipated might be happening, and apparently it did. I think I am actually running that right now. But we'll give a rundown about what's new with it and has it actually improved? And more importantly, will other people actually use it who are not forced to by their companies? AI will destroy us all, apparently. This is just going to be the roundup of all the news that happened in AI and Bing Chat and Google. There was a lot, of course, this week, including dire predictions from some of the world's smartest people who are actually, as will articulate, really terrible at communicating their ideas to normal people to get their attention. Zach has got his hands on that Lenovo ThinkPad X13S running the Snapdragon 8CX Gen 3, one of my favorite laptops, which I've yet to review. He's going to review it, though, and give his impressions. And I actually got to use it this week as well as I had to leave the house for a number of hours. Plus, we'll go over some reviews this week that we did on the site, including the Razer Blade 18, one of the biggest, most powerful laptops you can get for gaming, and it does not disappoint. Its specs are pretty incredible. We also have a couple other accessories that we'll briefly cover, and we'll also try to do a thing with the week because I forgot I have watched a bunch of movies. I'll just kind of give a recommendation of since that's all I did this week. Well, over the weekend at least. But anyway, how you doing, Zach, besides your not so great allergies?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. For some reason today I woke up and I've just had really bad allergies, sneezing everywhere. So I'm trying to hold it back for the podcast. But if I sound a bit snuffly, that's the reason why. How you been?
Not too bad. It's been a kind of a crazy week, of course. AI is still all over the place. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to address that. But yeah, it's people are interested in it and they should be. It's, I've said previously on other podcasts, this is the biggest tech story in the last, 10, 20 years. And it's just going to keep rapidly advancing. And I think people are going to be kind of surprised and at least some of the announcements that will be coming later this year as well. But first, let's get back to the core of this podcast. You like that? Windows Core PC. Zach, you had an exclusive report about what this is. Please explain to us what Microsoft is trying to do, what can we expect, and all that other cool stuff that you have learned.
So, should we start at the beginning? All the way back in time, about 5.5 years ago, maybe more than that at this point, Microsoft was working on something called Windows Core OS. And this was supposed to be like a universal base for Windows, a rebuilding of the platform from the ground up with modern code, pulling out all the legacy stuff and just making it more modern, really, for a more modern era to compete with Chromebooks and iPad OS and whatever else is out there these days. They tried to build a number of different versions on top of Windows Core OS, including Andromeda, which was supposed to be a version of Windows for the Surface Duo originally. Then there was Pegasus, which then sort of morphed into Windows 10X, and that, of course, that got the closest to shipping, but still didn't ship in the end. They cancelled Windows 10X and reused the UI that they were building for 10X on top of Windows Desktop for Windows 11. But in all of the Windows Core OS platform innovations never made it over, because one of the reasons why Windows Core OS existed was because it was going to be too hard and too complicated and too long for them to deliver those innovations on top of legacy Windows. There were a couple of additions to Windows Core OS that actually did ship. There was a version for HoloLens 2, and that's what I believe HoloLens 2 is running today. And then there was also, for a brief time, a version for Xbox, which I think also shipped. I don't know if it's still shipping, but Xbox was a Windows Core OS product for a brief time at the very least. But that's basically everything that shipped. There's also Factory OS, which is something that factories can sort of install and use. But other than that, there was never a version of Windows Core OS for traditional PC form factors, for mainstream use. So they just were never able to get it done, most likely because the primary app platform for Windows these days is that legacy app platform, and a version of Windows that doesn't run that is a problematic one for most people. Of course, they did try to run Win32 programs on top of Windows Core OS via virtualization through Veil or Rail technology, either remotely cloud-based in running the app or running it virtually locally. That was a problem for low-end PCs, of course. Performance wasn't great. And also the optimization between the legacy app and the modern OS just wasn't perfect either. They could talk to each other, but it wasn't as smooth as one would hope it would be. So that's why Windows Core OS was mainly cancelled, because there was never really, or Windows 10X rather, there was never really any viable form factor for traditional PCs. Now, when Windows 11 was first announced, we did sort of theorize, what about the platform innovations? They made a big deal about Windows 10X's platform enhancements, and now Windows 11 just gets the UI stuff. It's not getting really any of the platform innovations. Well, as it turns out, Microsoft isn't throwing all of that work away. Not really. They do still want to ship it in some capacity, and I'm told that that's happening now under a new project codenamed, well, I don't know if it's a codename, but it's named Core PC. So Core OS, now Core PC. I guess they renamed it because they want to put emphasis on the PC aspect, the fact that, PCs run legacy programs. So this is kind of what we want to focus on here and make it capable of doing. So what's happening here? Well, exactly the same thing, more or less, except they're coming at it from a different angle, a different perspective. Instead of rebuilding Windows from the ground up without legacy code, they're taking a look at what Windows is today, the full Windows desktop, and essentially breaking it down into more modular bits and bobs that they can put together and customize. And that has the benefit of maintaining native Win32 compatibility or legacy Win32 compatibility where it makes sense. So instead of there being a version of Windows that can run Win32 via virtualization, there can just be a version of Windows Core PC that just runs them more or less natively, because there's no need for the virtualization, because all of the stuff that requires Win32 is actually in there, because that's a version of Windows they've configured to have that included. So what are the kind of additions of Windows can we expect to see through Core PC? Well, they're testing multiple different configurations and ideas internally right now. One I've heard is that they're working on essentially a Chrome OS competitor based on Windows Core PC. It's a lightweight version of Windows that only runs Edge, Android apps, and web apps, as well as Microsoft Office, of course. So that technically wouldn't run Win32 programs, but as a result of that, it's supposedly going to be 60 to 75% smaller than Windows 11 SE, which is really interesting. Then there's another version that they're testing, which is kind of basically what Windows is today, but with state separation enabled. Now, state separation is a key differentiator between what Windows is today and Core PC. And as well as Core OS. Core PC is a state-separated platform, which means the Windows is installed into multiple different read-only partitions. Windows today it doesn't do that. It installs everything into one writable partition, which is a very old-school way of doing things. It's not as secure as separating the OS into different partitions, especially ones that are read-only, because of course a read-only partition is one that A, the user can't access, but B, third-party software can't access either, so it would ideally reduce viruses and malware perhaps as well. So that's what state separation is, and Core PC is like that, and it enables all sorts of benefits, such as faster Windows updates, how this works is, Windows today, when you install a new version of Windows, it's essentially reinstalling the OS as it does it, which is why it takes so long. With Core PC, those installations happen in the background to an offline or like a mirrored version of your OS, so that when the restart button comes up to say, hey, we're ready to install, that restart simply switches you into the other partition that wasn't running, and now it is running with the newest update. At least, I don't think that's technically accurate, but that's the idea behind how this works. Essentially, does the update in the background, and then when you do the restart, the update's already installed. And then it also enables things like faster reset as well, which is a big deal for Chromebooks. Chromebooks have a thing called Power Wash, which essentially resets the system back to factory defaults in under a minute or two, a couple of minutes. It's a very quick process, whereas on Windows today, if you want to reset a PC, it can take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, which is a long time. So yeah, Core PC will enable basically 1 or 2 minute resets back to factory default as well. And then it's also more secure because, like I said, things like the registry and drivers and whatnot are read-only, so users and malware and whatnot can't get access to them and change them about, which is really nice. Now, the last edition of Windows that I'm hearing they're working on is arguably the most interesting one, and it's one that's been described to me as silicon optimized. And the way it was described to me is... where was it? Give me 1 second. Yeah, so it's designed to reduce legacy overhead, focus on AI capabilities, and vertically optimize hardware and software experiences in a way similar to that of Apple Silicon. So this seems to be something they're working in partnership with, I'm guessing, chip vendors, Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, come to mind, where they're building Windows for those dedicated chips. Like, they want to build features out for those dedicated silicons, those NPUs, and whatever else AMD and Intel are doing as well. And that's where a lot of AI focus is coming. Now, that does mean that a lot of AI features will require that dedicated hardware to function. Not all of it will, I'm told. Some of it will just work on current PCs, but most of it will, a lot of the big stuff will be NPU based or NPU required, because a lot of it's quite power that, it takes a bit of system resources to function. Things like I'm hearing some AI features that are being developed include the ability for Windows to analyze content on display and provide contextual prompts to jumpstart projects or apps based on the information that's currently being viewed. So you could maybe be looking at an email in Outlook and it mentions that you're working on some sort of invitation for an event up and coming. Windows could be like, hey, it looks like you're planning an event. Would you like to jump into Designer and begin building that out with all of the requirements that was spotted in that email, for example? That's the kind of thing that they're working on for Windows. The other thing, which is an obvious one that other platforms already kind of have, but the ability to just have Windows analyze an image and have you be able to just grab things out of that image, whether it be text or items to paste somewhere else. Those sort of things are all what they're sort of working on as AI for Windows in the next year or two. So that sort of stuff will be probably part of the Windows 12 initiative, and that's kind of where I'm hearing Core PC will also be. They're hoping to have Core PC ready to ship alongside the Windows 12 stuff next year. But that also, I think it means that Core PC will be a separate entity, just like Windows 10X was. We will have Windows 12, air quotes, for desktop, and then we'll have Core PC PCs, which will be separate. They may be branded the same, they may be branded differently. I don't know. Maybe the web-only version of Core PC won't be called Windows. Maybe the version of Core PC that's kind of like what we've got today will be called Windows. We just don't know how they're going to market or brand any of this. But I'm pretty sure legacy Windows, as we know it today, will be sticking around beyond 2024. I don't think it goes away the second Core PC is done. I still think that will be the primary sort of platform for Windows for many years to come. And so it will still get Windows 12, Windows 13, Windows 14. But more and more Core PCs will hopefully start shipping from 2014 onwards. And that's slowly but how they're going to, I guess, get Core PC to become the dominant version of Windows by preloading it onto new hardware over the next handful of years. So that's basically the story. The TLDR is Windows Core OS, the vision isn't dead. They're still trying to make it work under a new project named Core PC. We expect to see the first sort of versions of Core PC begin shipping at the end of next year, assuming their plan doesn't change. And then we'll see where things go. The fact that it runs Win32 programs natively where necessary is very important, because that's kind of the key reason why Windows 10X failed, because it wasn't able to do that native sort of functionality for legacy Win32. That's ideally not an issue with Core PC. Dan, what do you think of this effort so far?
I guess I'll believe it when I see it. But yeah. I mean, I've been, I think a lot of us have been, we understand the need and argument for this, right?
Yes.
Laptops increasingly relying more on the cloud. We've joked around before about like, if your Wi-Fi goes out, what do you use a computer for? Like, There's really nothing. You could maybe run Word locally, and then and that's about it, right? There's
Yeah.
not much you can do on PCs these days without being connected. And as that more and more people have Wi-Fi, as more 5G devices, and of course 6G's coming out. Um, More and more of what we do is reliant on the cloud. And so, how much localized hardware do you need to run things that consume a lot of battery, right? This is the problem with gaming laptops. Sure, you can run the game locally, but even then, a lot of the times you need to be online to run the game, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
well, why not then start streaming the game and you don't have to worry about the hardware on the PC? So this idea of like breaking down the operating system and make it more modular, easier to update, and yeah, more modern it's a tricky thing that they need to do. And the tricky part is, of course, what do you call it? What you were alluding to,
Yeah.
right? Like even calling it like even if they called it Windows Core PC, like that's a cool name, but it also implies like, oh, it's core, all right? So what's it missing?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the because and then you can't call it like Windows Fast because it implies the rest of Windows is slow, and that's negative, right? So it's really tricky and like and they do they want to call it something Windows, which has brand recognition and people know what it is and implies that the things that they normally run on a Windows PC will run here, or do they want to give it a new name and start over?
Yeah.
But that runs into that problem, like as I was just alluding, like then people are like, yeah, but what does it run? Google doesn't have this problem with Chrome OS because it's technically their first desktop laptop operating system, so they can just start from ground zero. Um, Apple has a little bit of this problem. They have Mac OS, and then they have iOS, and then they have iPad OS. And,
Mm.
in theory, they want to kind of merge all of those together, but that's not trivial. I mean, we still don't have touchscreen support on Mac OS, but there are all these rumors, of course, that, eventually they may ship a version of the MacBook that runs basically iPad OS that's configured for the laptop, which makes a ton of sense because what they're doing is they're not really they improve Mac OS, and they always will, right? Mac OS will be needed for graphic designers and people who are running the really heavy stuff. But there's, if you have a MacBook Air, why not make it, if you build up iPad OS to make it more and more desktop-like, which is exactly what they're doing, at what point can you just throw it on a MacBook Air and basically get the same experience, but you can get better battery life, you'll get touchscreen support. So they're kind of doing their same thing. So, I'm glad they're doing this. I'm also glad they're kind of taking their time with it. You've mentioned these previous iterations internally that they've been trying to
Yeah.
do. And, you know, they didn't launch them. And that stinks, for people who want this kind of thing. But it's also good that they don't launch something that they're not completely confident is going to be the solution to the problem that they want, that will have limitations that people are going to, immediately jump on. So,
Yeah.
the good news is they're still doing well in the laptop and PC space, even though the market has, dropped down due to other reasons. But what they're doing in Windows 11 and clearly with the AI stuff now, that's really coming into the picture. Having a modern light version of Windows that also has a lot of AI built into it, that's relies a lot on the cloud and everything. That is a really cool idea. Pretty
Yeah.
soon you could literally have a thin client that just opens up high resolution display and everything, but the operating system will be super light and fast, more like your smartphone. I mean, that's just kind of what people want. At least a lot of people do. Not everyone, but a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously with Core PC being state separated, that is interesting because while a number of apps will be fine with that, and that shouldn't be a compatibility concern, there are legacy apps that will have issue with state separation, and they just simply won't function, they won't run, or maybe they will run, but some of the functions within the app won't work correctly because of permissions and all the other stuff that third-party customization software, for example, that edits system files and whatnot, likely won't work. Or edit the registry. Because of that, Microsoft is actually working on a compatibility layer to sort of aid with those legacy programs. There'll be a layer that runs on Core PC that essentially emulates an editable registry or an editable System32 or whatever it may be. They call this, it's codenamed Neon, which is quite interesting because, of course, for those of you who've been listening to this podcast for many years, the codename Neon was something we originally talked about as the codename for Fluent Design System. That was the codename they used for the new Windows sort of blurred UI back in 2016, 2017. they're reusing the code name for this, for the compatibility layer, which I don't think is a coincidence. I just think Microsoft reuses code names quite often, and I'm pretty sure we won't be hearing the last of the Neon code name. There's other things I'm hearing in development that are also code names Neon, which we'll get to at a future date. But yeah, for today, the Neon compatibility layer that will simply aid legacy Win32 programs in running on a state-separated OS by essentially emulating a shared state OS instead for those apps to be able to function correctly. So that should ideally bridge the gap between the legacy apps that won't function on a state-separated PC, and therefore reduce the app gap, which may or may not form by moving to core PC. But yeah, that's basically all the news around that. I guess I want to... Maybe I shouldn't read this out. Maybe I think it'll be fine to read this out. So one of the internal documents that I was able to view for about Core PC, there was a really interesting analogy that they had, and it explained it to me perfectly about why they're doing it this way rather than just continuing with Windows Core OS. And the analogy is of an electric car. They say, imagine a world where there was an overnight switch to electric cars without the creation of infrastructure, for example, charging stations, and simultaneously shutting down gas stations. The world would simply grind to a halt. In many ways, that is how aggressive Windows 10X was, with it taking on a new shell windowing user and security model, together with state separation, which changed integration rules for apps and drivers. All while the launch vehicle changed from a motorcycle, aka Andromeda, to a convertible, aka Centaurus, to an economy sedan, aka single screen, all while our battery supplier, aka UWP apps, entered bankruptcy. The shock could simply not be absorbed. And that's a great way to describe it. Windows Core OS was an excellent vision. It's more green, it's more lightweight. Ideally, on paper, it makes more sense. But the reality of its implementation isn't feasible because everybody's used to how things currently work. And if you were to shut down all the gas stations for gas cars and whatnot and tell everybody they've got to go out and buy electric cars now, everything would stop. It'd be like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm happy with what I've got currently. And that's basically what Core OS was and how Core PC differs. They need to factor in the legacy as part of the new thing. And so that's what they're going ahead with Core PC. And
you should make an infographic with all the past attempts and explain.
Yeah.
It's an interesting but complicated analogy that was given. I mean, I get what they're saying. It's true. Who was it in comments? Yeah, Sheila says, call it Windows Cloud PC. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward name. I'm not sure how much, cloud really plays a role in it. And I'm now losing my voice suddenly. But, I think that's an interesting approach. That reminds me, what role, if any, does Microsoft 365 or the Windows 365, the cloud-based version, play in this?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. Obviously, I think for the low end sort of web-based only version of Core PC, they could very easily sort of rebrand that as Windows Cloud or something. And then because Windows 365 isn't an OS, you've got to remember that it's a service. Windows 365 incorporates Windows 11 and Windows 10. Windows 365 isn't a product on its own, or rather, it's not a version of Windows on its own. It's simply just the service that powers the remote connection between you and a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 PC. But for Core PC, it's really more for local devices. It'll be the low-end version could be called Windows Cloud. That would actually probably be a great name for it. And then it could rely on Windows 365 to connect to legacy programs if that's something an enterprise or a school wanted to utilize, because that's kind of what this version of Windows will be aimed at. It'll be aimed at low-end education PCs or low-cost PCs that ideally don't function well with Win32 programs already. An Intel Celeron, like the Surface Laptop SE is a great example of what this low-end Core PC edition would run on, because that's it's already limited on storage and RAM stuff. So a version of Windows that's up to 75% smaller and more efficient would be excellent for a device like that. And it's also why Chrome OS does so well on these low-end PCs. OEMs can ship hundreds and thousands of these really cheap-to-build computers because they're so low-powered. But it's okay to do so because Chrome OS is optimized well enough to be able to run without it being a problem, whereas Windows is still big and it's still heavy. And although Microsoft has tried many, air quotes, lightweight editions of Windows based on Windows Desktop, obviously they started with Windows 10S, that moved to Windows 11 SE, they're still full Windows. They still have the full breadth of legacy compatibility. They're still a lot heavier than Chrome OS and slower than Chrome OS. So that's why Core PC on the low end is very much needed. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, on normal PCs that you and I use, it will be nice to have the platform enhancements through things like state separation, faster updates, more secure. That will be great. But people don't want that if you lose the compatibility with legacy apps, which is why the Neon containerization layer, not containerization, but the Neon layer and being able to run Win32 programs natively is super important for us. So that's kind of why they needed to focus on that significantly for this edition. So yeah, regarding the branding, we have no idea how they're going to name them. I don't think the low-end version will be called Windows like the high-end version will be, or if it is, it will have it will differentiate with the moniker considerably.
It's just called Win.
Yes, it's Win, and then we've got Windows, and then we've got Windows 11 or
Win OS and Windows OS.
Win OS, yeah, could be. No, I wouldn't be surprised if they do use the Microsoft 365 branding for that low end edition, because it would be like this is the OS you want with your Microsoft 365 subscription, because it works best with Office Online and all of the AI stuff we've been doing in Office there and whatnot, because it's all cloud based, so you don't really rely on the hardware. And then maybe the rest of it will be just called Windows. Maybe Windows that we've got today is still like the main Windows 12, Windows 13, and then the core PC edition is like maybe Windows 12 X or something. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But we'll have to see what happens in regards to...
Yeah, someone just put down comments, 12X OS.
Yeah.
X always does sound cool when you got nothing else to name something.
I guess the only problem is that since they tried Windows 10X, I don't know if they'd want to harken back to that idea. They especially since it runs the legacy apps now.
Yeah, maybe, but I'm not sure that 10X seeped enough into the tech culture to have
Hopefully
made
not.
an impact. I don't think most people could remember that. So, and it never launched. If it launched and failed,
Sure.
sure.
No one actually got to try it other than people who tried the leaks build, but that's something else.
Windows
entirely.
Phone OS.
Yeah, Windows Mobile. Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah,
I mean, it's funny. Windows Mobile would be perfect.
It really would, yeah. It really would. So yeah, anyway, that's the news around Windows Core PC. Again, these plans could change. They could be pushed back. They could be cancelled. As history would suggest, it may get cancelled, but hopefully this time...
Thanos is listening to this right now, and he's like, cancel it all.
Yeah, done.
Just to spite Zach.
Hopefully not, because I think Windows needs this. Because yes, Chrome OS and other platforms are more modern. I know people say to me, does Windows really need to do this? Is Windows really that unmodern? Don't take my word for it. Microsoft's internal documentation points out competitors for reasons why they need to do this. Google and Apple and their modern platforms are beating Windows in a number of key areas that Microsoft would like Windows to partake in, such as that low end and those.
I mean, we went through the Windows 8 tablet phase. We tried. There were some cool tablets. Lenovo made some awesome ones, and I found one of my Dell ones the other day. Like, it was cool. They had the top layer of the OS that was kind of neat, for Windows 8, but between the processors at the time and the heaviness of the operating system, it was just not a great experience, and the battery life wasn't great. Yeah, I mean, they really do need something there.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
anywho, that's basically that. Yeah.
On to boring news. Surface Hub 2S Gen 2. This was also announced this week. Let's just give a brief rundown of what's new with it. Why is it a Gen 2?
Oh, we don't know. That's the news.
Brilliant.
Actually, the way Microsoft announced this was terrible, because the original blog post they put up was kind of wrong, and then they edited it to make it make more sense. But the original report from Microsoft, I guess announcement from Microsoft, was that they were announcing, or rather pre-announcing, that a second generation Service Hub 2S is coming later this year, and that it would ship with a new version of Windows called Teams Rooms on Windows. And this is basically a version of Windows that they've built for basically to mimic Teams Rooms that was on Android, or maybe that's new to Android as well. But Teams Rooms have been a thing for a while. It's essentially an optimized OS, I guess, that focuses on Teams. Like, it shows your upcoming meetings and all this other stuff. The version on Windows, of course, can also do other Windowsy things like run apps and whatnot, which will be important for collaborative sort of whiteboard devices of that nature. But yeah, it's essentially replacing what the Surface Hub 2S currently runs, which is something called Windows 10 Team. That's been around since the Surface Hub 1 originally launched. Of course, they were supposed to move on to Windows Core OS on the Surface Hub 2X. That was cancelled and never shipped, unsurprisingly. So Surface Hub 2S ended up shipping with Windows 10 Team as well, but it's now getting its own dedicated release called Teams Rooms OS. Now, when they made this announcement, they said in the blog post that Surface Hub 2S, the new Teams Room OS, would only be available on the second generation Surface Hub 2S. And they made no mention of there being an upgrade path for existing Surface Hub 2S customers. Then they updated the post later and said there will be a migration path for existing Surface Hub 2S customers. Now, what that tells me is it won't be issued as an update. You're not going to get this over the air and be able to install it on your existing hardware. you will be given the opportunity to buy a new compute cartridge with Teams OS on it if you want to upgrade to the Teams Room OS. And that's kind of what that's the big selling point of Surface Hub 2S, right? They made that big deal about it being upgradable. So when this second generation Hub 2S launches later in the year, I'm almost certain it will just be a compute cartridge upgrade. They're not going to change the display or anything like that. It'll be a new compute module. You swap this out and you put this new one in, and you have the new OS and new specs.
Doesn't that compute module also have the processor in it?
Yes, it has the whole computer essentially. Yep, even the ports.
So they could upgrade the processor if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think they will. I think I had heard that it's going to be upgraded to an 11th gen chip, which isn't the newest. But
I was going to say they're going to upgrade it to 8th gen Intel.
Yeah, that's what it currently is. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. But no, yeah, I think it's getting 11th gen, and that's basically all I know about it so far. And I guess the fact that it will be preloaded with Teams Rooms on Windows instead. So that's the 2S news. Again, no pricing or availability information was provided, just that it's coming later this year and second-gen devices will ship with Teams Rooms on Windows. I do want to also mention that this is quite interesting. Teams Rooms on Android, which was also announced alongside this. Teams Rooms on Android is basically for sort of less powerful peripherals, I guess, like the phones you get, like the conferencing phones and maybe those little tiny displays you get outside of meeting rooms and stuff. That's what Teams Rooms on Android is for. The UI is more or less the same across both. Functionality, there's probably quite different, but the UIs are very similar. And I'm actually told that the team that was working on Surface Duo OS, many of them were pulled away from the Surface Duo to work on Teams Rooms on Android. And that Android division, the Microsoft Android and Experiences org, I can't remember what it's called now, a number of them were working on this Teams Rooms on Android thing. And now I do find it quite interesting that they've done this thing where they've built one UI that now ships across Android and Windows through Teams Room. And that's kind of what we were talking about with Surface Duo 3, right? The idea that for them to differentiate, they would try to mimic the Windows UI on the Surface Duo 3 with a foldable screen running Android. Maybe this is the first sort of example of what I'm talking about there. The idea that here's a UI. It's very similar across both platforms, but the platforms are completely different underneath. Maybe that's what Surface Duo 3 is going to do as well. It would look like Windows 12, even though it's Android. And so...
That'd be so cool.
It would be cool. It would be cool. Hopefully they do it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if they did do that, right, like, that would be such a halfway meet between the Windows Phone fans who won't let it go and people like us who are like, they can't make a Phone OS anymore. I'd be happy to have a device like that, plus whatever foldable and all that. At least, because at least it would be a different UI experience than standard Android.
It would differentiate from other Android phones, which is the key thing, right? Everybody says, well, if Microsoft is just going to do a copycat hardware, how do they differentiate? Why would you buy this over a Samsung?
Yeah, it's going to be the software.
The software, it has to be the software, right? So if it looks like Windows and if it's familiar to Windows users, that's the differentiator. Oh, it's a Windows device, even though it's technically Android. There are no Windows apps you want to run on a phone anyway, so that's not going to be an issue.
Right.
As long as the UI...
No, it's all their services. And now that we're going to have Copilot for Office, and if you think about the timing of whatever Copilot, for Office is going to come, it would be Surface Duo 3's time frame. It would be probably around there at least. But having like a compatible device they take around with you that's synced up to your computer that has all this AI stuff, I mean, would be super rad. I mean, that's something I would, of course, the question is, they'll have a lot more experience of Android at that point too, but that would be a big like overhaul. And, we've seen their first attempt at Android was a little rough. But now they're getting a little bit more practice, so maybe we don't have too much to worry about. But
hopefully.
I don't know. That's cool though.
Yeah, we're still far away from the Duo 3 being ready, so there's plenty of time between now and next year for things to develop or change or get cancelled, sadly. So hopefully...
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we're talking this time next year. We'll probably have a lot more to say on a Duo 3.
I think so,
even if it's going to be called a Duo 3. And they could just... to be fair, at that point, it'll probably be so long that they probably won't call it the Duo 3. They're probably going to rebrand it. Yeah. And it'll be a fresh start completely on a new mobile device. It'll have some legacy roots from the Duos, but it's going to be like a whole new project.
I wanted them to call it Surface Note or Surface Journal.
Oh, that'd be so good. Right?
Yeah.
Surface Note would really imply, and it could still make calls. It could still do that, but it implies its primary function of this enterprise creativity device that's a companion device to your PC and Microsoft life.
Agree.
Yeah. Free advice there, Microsoft. Take it,
Yes.
please. And we're going to go to some other related news, Teams 2.0. But first, a word from our sponsor, which
Yes.
Zach is going to do, and then I'm going to go try to get my voice back in the other room.
Yeah, sure. So this week's episode of the podcast is sponsored by Indeed. When it comes to hiring, you need to trust your gut. But what if you could give your gut some help? When you need to find top talent fast, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows that over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. You know, I think one of the things that I find pretty amazing about Indeed is that candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count, which is why with Indeed that you only pay for the quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So if you want to take advantage of our offer, you can visit indeed.com/WCP to start hiring now. That's indeed.com/WCP. Indeed.com/WCP. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing. Not available for everybody. You need to hire. You need Indeed. Thanks to Indeed for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. And now it's time to get back to the news. Teams 2.0. Dan is yet to return, but I can give you the rundown. Teams 2.0 is the thing that we've been waiting for a little while at this time. They call it the new Teams, and it's a lighter version of Teams. It's also more prettier, in my opinion. It's faster, simpler, more flexible, and smarter. So it's no longer based on Electron. As far as I'm aware, it's now a WebView 2 based app. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but it's no longer Electron for sure because it's fast. That's how I know that, which is fantastic. In fact, their whole marketing thing for this is look at how much better it is compared to the old Teams, because even they have to admit the old Teams was pretty trash. This new one though is much nicer, has a nicer interface, very sort of Windows 11-esque. It has micro effects in the tides bar and whatnot, which is always nice to see. So like I said, they advertise it as simpler, faster. They say our North Star for the new Teams is to make it twice as fast while using half the system resources. To achieve this, we've made the ground-up investment to overhaul the platform to optimize the data, network, chat, and video architecture for speed and performance. I'm trying to find if it's WebView 2 or not. Yes.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it's supposed to be WebView 2.
Yeah, that's confirmed. So there we go. And that's nicer. And of course, that's across all platforms, web, Windows, and Mac. So that's really nice as well. Fluent UI has lots of Fluent UX experiences, React, WebView 2, lots of other things as well. And it's in preview now. So what that means, since this is Teams, it's now available in preview for your enterprise to enable for its users. So if you are a Teams user, you can't just go into the client and switch it on if your enterprise hasn't enabled it yet. But if they have, then you should be able to do that, and you can try out the new Teams. Otherwise, you will have to wait. I think Teams 2.0 is launching later in the year officially. But that's basically the news. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Dan?
Well, I just sent you a message on it. Did you get it?
I didn't. Let me look now. Where did you send the message? On Skype?
No, on Teams.
Oh no, that's Teams. That's Teams Consumer. That's different. Teams Consumer was already based on WebView 2 from the beginning. What they're doing with Teams, Teams Commercial is basically.
Oh, that explains.
Yeah, doing the same thing. Also, I don't have Teams Consumer running. That's why I didn't get it. Because it's
Fair
rubbish.
enough.
Nobody uses it, so why would I have it running? I'll load it now.
Yeah, I was gonna say Teams. The consumer version seems fast.
That's why they basically were like, hey, Teams Consumer is pretty good. Let's base the commercial version on this, and so that's what's happened. Also, I have the app open now, and I still don't see your message.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, there you go.
I just sent you a hey, you up?
Yes, I'm awake, Dan.
So
yeah, that's Teams 2. Fantastic news, which is kind of what we were expecting them to. We were talking about this last week, right? With Frank Shaw put that tease out as to what they were going to announce,
right.
And it was this. It was Teams 2.0. So not very exciting, in my opinion.
Well, I guess if you have to rely on Teams. It
Yeah,
is,
which
but
we don't, so I'm all right. We don't use Teams for work, sadly, because our business is all in on Google experiences, which isn't great either, to be honest. I don't like Google Workspace.
All right, let's get to the cool stuff. AI news. It's going to destroy us. There's a lot this week, so let's kind of run down the big things. Well, we'll just briefly go over some of this stuff. Right, Chat GPT 5 is already rumored to hit by the end of the year. Someone mentioned apparently on their team that they're expecting it to possibly hit GAI. That is general or AGI, sorry, artificial general intelligence. AGI is the big holy grail, and it's loosely undefined as to what it means. This is the concept of AI that gets so smart it can like build itself, and it's basically conscious and is smarter than people. This is the rogue, what everybody kind of fears, right? Because AGI is something some people want, but then a lot of people are like, we got to be so super careful around it. I'm one of those people who are like we're going to probably get AGI, but I don't think it's anytime soon. And I can guarantee you ChatGPT 5 won't hit it either. GPT is a large language model system, and that's a piece of technically AI. But like true AI, it would use that. It's like sort of your language center for your brain, right? That's a large language model, part of it. And language itself is complicated, right? You have your syntax, you have your phonology, you have morphology. So you have all these subsystems that then connect to your conceptual system, and then your what's called the intentional system, the idea of like speaking and your larynx, and then like your hands and gesturing and sign language, right? But that is also separate from conceptual stuff and being able to think and vision and how that works, or hearing processing, sensory pain, right? So there's a lot going on with the brain. And unfortunately, when it comes to AI, so far it's been very, people like to think AI is like, oh, maybe this is how the brain works and this is how, and it's no, not at all. Like, we don't understand how the brain works. So the idea of trying to model it on a computer doesn't make sense because we don't understand how it's happening in the brain. We don't even have an agreed upon theory of language and how that works, which is something obviously I studied for a long time. And that's a very complicated issue. So this idea of like AGI, is kind of, I think we should discuss it. There should be panels on it. Government should get involved in terms of what happens if we actually get there. But we don't even know how to define it yet because we technically don't know how to define consciousness yet either. Don't forget, there's a lot of research going on to like, do lobsters feel pain? Because we don't have a concrete system for understanding pain. And you can say, well, somebody has a reflex to it, but is it just a reflex, that was built in for survival purposes, or do they actually experience what we understand as pain? These are like really high level concepts that are really tough to investigate. So, I think a lot of people are getting involved with this stuff and are just really overhyping it. I think GPT-5 will be like a big advance, obviously, in terms of this idea of passing the Turing test. You'll talk to it and you think you're really talking to a human, but that is not in of itself proof of consciousness, right? That's proof of something that fooled you, which if you know anything about humans, magicians can fool you too. And guess what? Magicians actually aren't magic. But if you watch them, you would think they were because they're just fooling your systems. And that's what these, AI quote unquote systems are doing. So I think a lot of it's a little bit hyped up, but yeah, I mean, GPT-4 is just out right now after we just got used to GPT-3 and 3.5, and now they're talking 5. I tell you, this stuff is going to advance very quickly. So stick a pin in that. That's a big thing that's going to be, happening in the coming months. There's another report. Google AI researcher resigned after learning Google's Bard uses data from ChatGPT. So this is a complicated thing that, Google has been desperately trying to catch up, and in doing so, may be violating OpenAI's terms of service by, quote unquote, borrowing data from ChatGPT. Yeah, Google is, I think Google is going to do a lot here, but they're definitely behind when it comes to where Microsoft is in terms of rolling this stuff out by many, many months. And, I think Google's like in real panic mode now because Microsoft is just going crazy and rolling this stuff out all over the place. What else was there? Bing Chat AI can now generate images in addition to text. Actually, we already knew about that.
Yeah,
That's
we
kind
knew
of
about
old
that.
news. That's although been rolling out a little bit more. You do need to be in the creative mode to use that, but it's fine. It's an okay image generator. I'm not completely blown away by it. There are definitely better versions out there. In fact, I was talking about in one of our chats. I always forgot the name of it. Oh, the other image generator that starts with an M? Midjourney.
Mid-Journey.
Yeah.
Mid-Journey.
Yeah, Midjourney apparently solved the hand issue. If
Oh,
you didn't know,
yeah.
one of the quick ways to tell an AI generated image, at least using people, was you just look at their hands. AI just didn't get hands, and you would have like freakish
Yeah.
ten-fingered hands and all
Yeah.
sorts of just weird areas. But apparently they fixed that, and so now Midjourney is creating some really, really scary and realistic uh, images, including I think it was The Sun just ran a story. It was famous people in history if they were able to take selfies generated via AI, and there was Jesus and Cleopatra. And the images are amazing. They're just like hilarious looking. So that AI stuff is getting, kind of all over the place. There was also, and I got to bring this story up here, a letter signed by 1,100 people saying we need to pause AI because of its threat, its existential threat to humanity. Uh, this letter is just kind of all over the place, in my opinion, and has a lot of problems with it. Uh, yeah, here's Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, and other tech titans call for immediate pause of AI training. And Gary Marcus was on here, former professor of mine, and he's really, I actually agree with a lot of what Gary Marcus says in this stuff. Um, Stuart Russell, Berkeley professor of computer science, Yoshu Bengo, founder and scientific director of Mila. So here's kind of the problems with this. First, it was done by the Future of Life Institute, which, if you've never heard of, fair enough. They are, how to put this? They're partially funded by Elon Musk. And Elon
Sure.
Musk, I gotta go on a rant here about Elon Musk again because
Here we go.
he's just like ridiculous about this stuff. First of all, he's calling for a pause in AI for 6 months. This is the dude that put thousands of Teslas onto the road with computers that can quote unquote full self-driving, which is nonsense. And I say this as a Tesla owner. Like I love my Model 3. I don't have the full self-driving because I'm not an idiot. Plus, I don't drive that much. I just have the autopilot stuff. But like, he put this on the road, no regulations whatsoever, right? Didn't consult governments, didn't talk about this at all. People actually died because of this, right? There are lawsuits going on because the cars would like crash into embankments. There was one that crashed into a tractor trailer was going across, and the car didn't stop and just it went under the trailer and killed the guy. Like, you want to talk about the threats of AI? Like, Teslas have actually killed people where last I checked, Bing Chat has not. And I'm not really worried about Bing Chat killing people. But the idea like Musk is now calling a pause for this. This is the dude who's also injecting, 30,000 satellites into orbit, with once again, no consultation with other countries and any idea of managing all these satellites, which are now like gunking up our orbit and causing problems with other countries and trying to get stuff into space. Like, it's just hilarious that he's calling for the pause here. There's also this other issue, which he's been kind of critical of Microsoft and OpenAI, which again is just like, let's step back in history here. Semfora, their website now does a lot of good investigative journalism, and they got sourcing about this, which one of the founders of OpenAI, doesn't disagree with. That basically back in 2018, when Elon Musk left OpenAI on good terms, the proposed reason was because, well, they're building AI into Teslas, and they don't want to compete, and it's overlapping of interest, right? Which that sounds good on paper, and there's actually probably a little truth to that. The real reason, apparently, or I should say reportedly, is because Musk said, listen, we're falling behind where Google is. They're doing all this new technology, and we're not there yet. Here's my solution. And you can already guess what his solution is. Make me the head of the company. Make me head of OpenAI. I will solve everything. And I can quote the article here. Yeah, he told Sam Altman, another OpenAI founder, that he believed the venture had fallen fatally behind Google, people familiar with the matter said, and must propose a possible solution. He would take control of OpenAI and run it himself. Exactly. This is classic Elon. And guess what? The board turned him down. Good. And soon thereafter, he left. And the thing was, he was supposed to contribute, he already contributed $100 million. Not insignificant, but he pledged another $1 billion over a period of years. And he said he would continue to do that because, again, publicly, him and OpenAI were on good terms, and it was just a conflict of interest, and he's going to work on Tesla. Fair enough. Well, guess what? He never came through with the $1 billion. So they never got that money. So guess what happened? So they were falling behind on this stuff. Google's Brain's transformer had blown open a new frontier where AI could improve endlessly, but that meant feeding it endless data to train it, a costly endeavor. So OpenAI made a big decision to pivot toward these transformer models. On March 11, 2019, OpenAI announced it was creating a for-profit entity so that it could raise enough money to pay for the compute power necessary to pursue the most ambitious AI models. Quote, "We want to increase our ability to raise capital while still serving our mission, and no pre-existing legal structure we know of strikes the right balance," the company wrote at the time. OpenAI said it was capping profits for investors, with any excess going to the original nonprofit. Which also mentioned that Sam Altman, who now runs OpenAI, takes no equity in the company because he's already wealthy and he didn't want to disrupt that. And actually, some people were upset about that because then he, quote, doesn't have a vested interest in the company since he has no financial ties to it anymore. But that's the way he rolls. Well, guess where they got that money from? Microsoft. So because Elon Musk didn't get his way to run the company, he took his money and ran, leaving OpenAI needing money. So they had to go raise it, and Microsoft steps in. And now he's complaining that Microsoft and OpenAI have this close relationship. Are you kidding me? And now he's calling for a 6-month moratorium, which, let's get something straight here. It's never going to happen. This is stupid. This is like going, I wish the sky wasn't blue. Yeah, cool, nice. Can we talk about realistic solutions here? Because that's not happening. What world is like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all these companies going to go? Like they're literally saying in another article, I think it was in Time, I'll bring that up as well, basically said, this was an OpenAI, pausing AI development is enough. We need to shut it all down. This is in Time magazine. He's a theorist from the U.S. and leads research on the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. He's been working on aligning artificial general intelligence since 2001, is widely regarded as a founder of the field. Serious dude. Wrote the most ridiculous article I've ever read. I mean, he basically gives the plots for Terminator and Age of Ultron. He doesn't name them like that, but that's what it's reading as. And he's basically going like, listen, this is going to absolutely destroy all biological life on the planet. He says that, right? And he's like, well, there's no solution. You just got to shut it all down. You got to shut down the servers, all the GPUs. These companies need to track the GPUs. And it's just like, bro, I'm not even disagreeing the idea of AGI could be an existential threat to humans, right? I'm not disagreeing with that. I think we're very far from that, but it should be something we talk about. Absolutely. One, we're not shutting any of this stuff down. Two, he says, here we go. Sufficiently intelligent AI won't stay confined to computers for long. In today's world, you can email DNA strings to laboratories that will produce proteins on demand, allowing an AI initially confined to the internet to build artificial life forms or bootstrap straight to post-biological molecular manufacturing. Dude, that's Age of Ultron. That is the plot for an Avengers movie. Are you kidding me? Now, like, maybe someday that could happen, but we're talking about ChatGPT and Bing Chat right now. And he does nothing, absolutely nothing, to like connect those dots. And for average people reading this, you're like, wait, so I'm making funny pictures on the internet and we're chatting with a little robot on Bing, and this is going to somehow lead to destroying all life on the planet? Like, what? like Bing Chat is technically not full AI. It's a large language model system. It's very impressive, don't get me wrong, but it's not like what they're talking about with AGI. And so all this alarmism is just so bad because there are real technical issues we could be talking about today with ChatGPT and Bing Chat, like, for instance, plagiarism, commerce related to companies and where the information is being stolen from. Something Bing addressed this week in Microsoft, they said they may consider putting ads into their responses, and then the ad revenue will be shared with the sources for that information, which is an interesting proposal. Way more than Google's doing, which is not even giving citations for its stupid responses. So there's those issues. It's the idea of like, what about jobs? And possible job loss and its effect on the economy, right? There's this issue of like emotional reliance on these kind of systems and bots. There's the issue of cheating in schools and school papers, and how students are using this technology, whether it's damaging there. So there's like real issues. And talking about, should there be legislation in this? What should governments do? He addresses none of that. It's just we're going to go from apparently what we have today to the end of the world. And this letter that everybody signed is basically saying the same thing, which is absolutely stupid and does nothing to help this cause. All it does is just build up the hype and make it sound even more cool than it really is. And it's not that cool yet. It's getting there, but we're not Age of Ultron. Jesus. So that's my rant on that. I hope you enjoyed it. In terms of other news that happened, and I don't know if there was that much else. Did I miss anything else?
I don't think so.
Bing Chat's up to 20 turns now, so they keep raising it. A big sigh. Why'd you give a big sigh?
I just think it's funny how we're counting it every week when it goes up more. When it launched unlimited, like, it's not like it's getting better. It's that it was already amazing and they brought it really down to basically.
Yeah, but now they're giving it 20, and apparently it's not going off the rails with hallucinations and stuff like that. So they feel more confident that you can have a conversation with 20 turns, which, let's be frank, longer than most conversations I have with people. And like the results are going to, not be insane. So again, they're improving these models rapidly. And so that's fine too.
Do we know if Bard has limited turns when you use
I
Bard?
don't. I haven't even tried
I'm not even
Bard.
part of the preview. I signed up for it, but they didn't give me access.
They know who you work for, and that's why. Yeah, I mean, Bard is just like, it's so kind of far behind on this stuff right now. And it's like they're not even considering the whole idea of like, should we share revenue? They're not even up there yet, right? They're like, we don't even put citations. We're just going to rip data off on the internet and basically steal stuff from ChatGPT apparently as well. So, listen, this stuff is messy. Don't get me wrong, but we can have real discussions about this. But I mean, when it comes to even like getting back to the full self-driving with cars, like what's even the U.S. government done about that? Nothing. There's no regulation. There's nothing. People are like, that shouldn't happen. There's a Super Bowl ad that ran that called it to question it. There's no legislation. And so you're telling me that like even that, and we can't even agree on gun legislation in this country, that like all of a sudden now we're going to worry about, this AI with, you want to convince people these chatbots are going to destroy, civilization, which is just not the case, right? So,
I will say, I don't believe for one second that the AI will be able to kill civilization of its own free will. However, I do worry that the AI will be used as a tool to make humans lazier and less capable of skills and stuff in the future because they have an AI doing everything for them. That I can sort of believe as being a possible future. Obviously, it's not there yet. I still don't think GPT-4 is good enough to replace humans for work yet, of course, although some people seem to think that that's definitely a possibility in the near future. But yeah, that I guess is a concern. But no, I don't think it's going to be the next Terminator. I don't think we're anywhere near that.
So it's putting it in comments, Noise talking, if the alignment problem does not get solved, it's pretty much certain that AI will destroy us once it becomes smarter than us. I don't think that's certain.
No.
But there's the possibility, but we're so far from that. Not saying that we should ignore it. I'm not saying we should ignore these issues. I think we should openly have these conversations, and government should get involved, and the UN should get involved. Like climate change, there should be panels on this discussing this and talking about standards. But listen, you got to get China and Russia and all these other countries involved, and good luck with that. Sure, we won't do it, but this is like the nuclear arms race, right? Yeah. It's like, we should not have nuclear proliferation. We should talk about how, what was called MAD in the 80s, mutually assured destruction, the idea that like there's no isolated nuclear wars. It would just be one country launches missiles and the other one launches everything and just wipes out the whole planet, right? We came up with regulations about that, but that moved pretty quickly too, right? I mean, we got the atom bomb in the 40s, and then it was only just a couple of years later Russia got it, partly because they had spies, from the United States. But like that went pretty quickly, and that was pretty a big threat. So we should definitely address this stuff. But I just think they got to make better cases for this.
Also, I feel like it would be so easy to build in, procedures so we could stop any AI from doing anything that we wouldn't want it to do anyway. Unless a factory reset button. Just be like, all right, you're getting a bit crazy. Reset.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, I mean, there's also this idea of like maybe not put it like this is Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, in an interview with CBS, was asked about the dangers, and he said, "Well, that's why we're starting with Bing. Like, it's not dangerous, right? Like maybe start with the idea of putting AI in like systems that like Bing is not going to become sentient and all of a sudden find a way to destroy us. Like I don't really believe that's the case here. I think like I said, there are more immediate threats like self-driving cars, which the government's not doing anything about either. But like." Yeah, maybe not put AI into system critical things. Like, I don't know, maybe not link it up to your intercontinental ballistic missiles and call it Whopper, which again was the plot for War Games. Right?
Yeah.
Like, people have thought about this stuff. So maybe don't do that, right? Like we can have don't put it in charge of your all your weapon systems and have it like a hive mind, right?
Yeah.
Sure, they're putting AI into like F-16s. They're going to have those pretty much flying soon without pilots. I'm not. Something could go wrong with that, and there could be casualties. I'm not, putting that as but they're not going to like take over the world. Like I don't know. Maybe don't build giant robots that can operate guns.
Yeah.
This reminded me, by the way. I was going to say this for the thing of the week, but I did see Megan, which is a great movie. There's an unrated version apparently on the DVD, which I want to check out. It has even more gore to it because the version that came out, it's like PG-13, so it's pretty safe. But you can tell they edited stuff. But like the whole time, like I was watching, I'm like, why'd you make her super strong? It's a doll for a child. Why does it need to be able to throw humans around? Like, could you put a weight limit on it? But it was kind of funny because the creator of it, she like put no restraints on it and just rushed to get it because of the pressures of trying to create this thing.
Yeah.
But it was just like some dumb decisions too. Like,
I also just want to go back to the point where people are talking about already talking about AGI, and I just want to say I even read that some people were saying that GPT-4 shows sparks of AGI or whatever it's called, or no, yeah, general GA. I can't remember what it is. AGI, that's it, and. No, it's nowhere near AGI. It is not self-aware. It doesn't think for itself. It's still, I can't remember what the phrase is now. It's like a next word prediction model or something like that. It's not thinking for itself, and it can't operate I mean, I'm sure it can learn things. I mean, that's how they program, right? But the other thing is currently the GPT you use, like we use as people testing out the service, it's not yours. It's every time you come back to it, it's a clean slate. It doesn't learn you. It doesn't know who you are. At least with Bing Chat, anyway. Like Bing Chat, it's like it's never met me before. Every time I go up to it, and that's a key thing as well. Like it can't even do stuff like that yet, let alone become self-aware and then want to take over the world and know how to do that. And like it's there's more to it than it being,
right.
It's nowhere near being conscious
and again, large language models are not AGI. And someone, Noise against saying the people who are working on alignment are the ones who are raising the flag. Yeah, some of them, not all of them. And there was disagreement with that letter too from some of the people who even signed it, which has been made public. That it's so hard that it could take 50 years to figure out real AI alignment. Okay, first of all, give me a source for that. That sounds like a figure, again, people just pull out of their, behind. The same people who are saying AGI will be here in 3 years, and some people are saying it's going to be another 50 years before we hit AGI, and other people are saying we won't see it in our lifetime. Listen, there's no consensus on this stuff. And I'm not saying you're making a straw man here, because no one is saying that we shouldn't be discussing this and we shouldn't have, as I said, panels and government intervention talking about it. I think the AI hype that's, really building up around this is just absurd and does nothing to convince people to take action. I think it's just, if you read that Time article, it's absurd. Like, it makes no argument for it. It gives actually no, and same with the letter, it gives no immediate actions that we need to actually take. It just says there's a lot of danger, we should be scared. And this other one says, shut it all down, which is like absurd. Those aren't real solutions. Like, give me some concrete plans, some concrete advice about what we should do with these systems and what should be done. That letter, and they don't do that. And that's what my argument is here. So, like, it's not that AGI can't be a threat. It's just that the people who are making these arguments are bad at it. And this has historically been the case. You have super nerdy eggheads who create technology, and then you have politicians who know nothing, and then they get together and try to talk, and they don't understand each other. The eggheads make these arguments, and it just goes over the head of the politicians. We see this all the time in the U.S. government, and the politicians don't understand what's going on. You need people in between to sort of explain this stuff to average people, which is typically the role of media. So, again, I think these nerds, in all respect to Gary Marcus and Noam Chomsky, who also got involved with this, but like, some of them need to do sort of better jobs at this. Not that saying we should ignore them, but
I'll tell you, I for one am terrified that Microsoft Copilot is gonna wake me up in the middle of the night with a gun to my head.
Seriously. We just emailed. It's going to come on like, I just emailed all your friends and relatives, and it gave all your browser history.
Yeah. God damn it, Copilot.
Yeah, like, Copilot got me fired. It went rogue. Like I said, I'm a little bit more worried about self-driving Teslas right now, and the idea of that. Like, by the way, I saw a tweet from Elon Musk in 2018 said within like 6 months, there's a feature you can do on Teslas called Summon. The idea was like, you could be, your car could be parked in a parking lot or even like down the street, and you could just like through the app be like, hey, come here, car, and the car will drive itself to you. And it was idea like, it's raining out, the car will come and pick you up. And he said that the car, barring any borders or anything like that, will be able to drive from LA to New York via summons. Like, you could be in New York and use the app, be like, car, come over here, and the thing will drive across the country. Because he also had this idea of like, the charging stations will have a robot arm that the car will drive up to the station, and then its arm will come and just automatically connect. And then he said this is going to be coming like this year, like this is going to happen. It was just like, here we are, 2023. Summon still sucks. No one uses Summon, I can tell you. Like, it's a lame feature. And it definitely does not.
There's too many variables for it to be good. Like, the world is not the same here where it is where you are. There's no piece of software you can build that accommodates for every single scenario possible in life. That's why.
That's exactly the problem. Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's always going to suck, and that I feel like is why AGI is never going to be a real thing in our lifetime, because it's like there's
that
so many,
intuition. And to
even
infer. Is very difficult.
Even if we could build something that is able to technically think for itself, I wouldn't be surprised if the first hundreds of versions we build of that just think itself to death and refuses to function. Because it's like, how do you limit it at that point? Like, if it's thinking about things and learning things, how do you limit that and whatnot? And it's a hard computer science problem, I think. So I don't think
inference is one of the most difficult things to solve. It's one reason why humans are still better at driving than cars are. I can tell you, I was literally driving my car from Tesla yesterday. Listen, I love my Tesla. As I said, I took it in yesterday for the first time in 4 years for servicing, just to rotate the tires, get new tires, and some basics. And and there was a minor recall, right? As I was driving home using autopilot, I did the dangerous thing of going under an overpass. And anyone who knows the Tesla knows what I'm talking about. There's an issue that's been going on for years where, on occasion, almost randomly, you go under an underpass while on autopilot, the car phantom brakes. It just slams on the brakes, and you go from 65 to 30. And if a car is right behind you, you're going into an accident. And it's just like, they haven't figured that out. So, like, this stuff is going way slower than I think people or think it may be. Like I said, AGI, all that, let's have those conversations. Let's talk about legislation. Let's get government. And Microsoft is open to that. That's why they've done their responsible AI thing. They're trying to, make sure that doesn't happen. But I don't think scaremongering people saying that all biological life is about to be wiped out off the planet is going to help. Then it's like, well, then what's the point? Because China's going to make this. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like China's not like, well, I saw that letter. Let's stop. I mean, come on. This is dumb. Anywho,
Yeah.
I guess we can move on finally. I hope everybody appreciated my animated response. I guess we'll do. Sorry. After that, though, you do get another ad read, which I'll take. If I can bring up the copy now, where'd it go? There it is. Magic Mind, which I actually have here in front of me. If you're watching the video here, it comes in this little bottle here, which is really kind of cool. What's awesome about this, if you don't know, Magic Mind is an energy drink that doesn't rely on caffeine for the energy. And so that's its beauty. It has a bunch of natural ingredients in it, usually called nootropics, which are good for the brain, things like adaptogens. And that won't cause you jitters, nor will it cause you to stay up late at night or have trouble falling asleep. Um, I like my coffee. I have one coffee every single day. It's highlights. It does nothing for me, by the way. The caffeine is ineffectual for me. I just love the taste of it. If I had to drink 3 or 4 coffees, which I've done in the past, I feel just totally gross after it. First of all, I feel like I have to brush my teeth and it does stain your teeth, by the way. The acid in coffee is not great for you. I was told to cut down on anything that has acidity due to me losing my voice. You heard that earlier. Yeah, my vocal cords. I'm sensitive to all that stuff. I actually put in a acid reducer into my coffee, by the way, to do that. But all that stuff is just not great for you if you rely on it. Of course, ultimately, you should get a good night's sleep. But if you also get a good night's sleep and you take this, you will also feel better. So Magic Mind, it's a subscription, or you could just buy a one-time thing, which is kind of nice. I've been using it for a while. The beauty of it is it tastes like kind of like a tea, basically. Now you could just take this little bottle and just do it like a shot. I actually do it like that. I think it tastes really good. Or you just put it into a glass, add some water, dilute it, and just have like a natural tea that way. But I love these little bottles because I can throw them in my pocket, in my bag with me. I can take a couple of them on a trip and just take it when I need it. Versus if you're in middle of your fifth meeting during the day and you want to get a cup of coffee and you kind of can't, you could just have one of these, which is going to be way more convenient. So I've been using this for a while. I think it's really nice. Other things about it, yeah. So it has matcha in it, which if you've been following health and stuff, matcha, found in green teas and stuff is, it's an extended release version of caffeine, basically. So it's very mild on your system. It doesn't spike cortisol levels. Cortisol is related to stress in your system. High cortisol is actually really bad for your health. It's an issue a lot of people have. If you take too many stimulants, it spikes your cortisol, and which is why a lot of people end up getting health issues here. So this doesn't spike you at all. Bacopa monare, a nootropic that improves your attention span, your ability to process and learn new information. Ashwagandha, an adaptogen that reduces stress and anxiety. Adaptogens are just awesome. Rhodiola rosea is another nootropic and adaptogen that reduces fatigue and anxiety, increases your body's resistance to stress. I've said this before, but I take Rhodiola rosea every day. I take it actually before I go to the gym too. And ashwagandha is actually really good for taking before bed, believe it or not, as it does. There's also evidence, by the way, for guys out there, ashwagandha tied to increasing testosterone levels. Read this. There's research on this. I'm not making it up. It's out there now. Ashwagandha is one of the natural things that seems to boost testosterone levels for men, especially if you're in your 30s and going to your 40s, your T levels are dropping. It won't give you, if you're 18, it probably won't do anything for you. But for older people who are losing their testosterone, this will help restore it to be a little bit more natural. It ain't steroids. You're not going to get jacked from it, but it might, if you supplement with it long term, it has been shown to raise testosterone levels. Lion's mane mushrooms and cordyceps mushrooms. There's actually mushroom coffee out there now, which is kind of nice. Mixes, the natural beans with mushrooms. Another nootropic and adaptogen, reduces anxiety and inflammation while also supporting cognition by preventing neural degeneration and stimulating neural regeneration. Again, ton of interesting research on lion's mane. You can go read about that. So all this stuff is listed on the bottle. You can go check it out. So what's the deal here? So, you go to magicmind.co/WCP for the One Essential Podcast. and get up to 56% off your subscription for the next 10 days with the code WCP. Again, magicmind.co/WCP, or punch in the code WCP. I believe that I can also give you a discount of just 20% off your first one-time purchase. So say you don't want to subscribe to it, you just want to try it out, I highly recommend it. Punch in that code, get 20% off that one-time purchase. I imagine if you then go back and want it again, you can do the subscription and get 56% off for that subscription, which I recommend because it just shows up in your door in a little tiny box. That's the other cool thing here. And you'll have your month supply all set for you there. So Magic Mind, another great sponsor of our podcast. Thank you as always for that. Let's move on now to, oh yeah, I did this cool how-to. I forgot to send this out in our newsletter. By the way, we just redid our newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed to it, it's going to go out on Tuesdays and Fridays now. And it's a lot more curated and has a better format. And it's basically most of our top stories, but it's broken down by reviews, how-tos, Microsoft news, gaming, and all that kind of stuff. I spend a good 40 minutes putting it together, so I would appreciate if you guys subscribe. If you just go to the Windows Central website, you will get a pop-up, no doubt about it, but it's also listed on the website. You can just subscribe. But Fridays and Tuesdays around 12 p.m. Eastern time, you should get that. It's a great way if you don't have time to just go to our website every day or don't follow social, just to catch up on all the news that we think is super important, and that's been our biggest stories of the week, so go check that out. But I forgot to put this in there, which is I wrote a tutorial on, if you run, this is mostly for Android users. It can technically be done on iOS, but like all things iOS, it's better on Android. So the idea here is like Twitter, again, Elon Musk doing his things on Twitter. Tomorrow, all the blue checks are going away, blah, blah, blah. So he's made a lot of changes to Twitter. A lot of people don't like them. There's that For You column now, which is an algorithmic curated thing that they are suggesting tweets and accounts you should follow. Some of it's the people you do follow, with others that you don't. And the idea is to learn, and to expand. And I kind of get it, right? Instagram does this now too, and Facebook was doing it. But the problem is the view always defaults to For You, versus there's the Your Following column, which is just literally a chronological feed of the people you follow, which is what most people prefer. There's also just a lot of other stuff. There's all the analytics and all these menu items that they put in there, and Twitter Blue and all this. So I talked about this before. There's an extension out there called Control Panel for Twitter. It's free. It's on GitHub, so you can even go look at the code and everything. And I wrote about this previously because you can take this extension, you can run it in Edge, you can run it in Chrome, you could run it on Firefox on your desktop, and specifically in Edge and Chrome, actually anything that creates a PWA. If you go to Twitter, then twitter.com, you can then create a PWA, a progressive web app, and you'll have a standalone containerized app of Twitter on your PC. This is the same version that's in the Microsoft Store, by the way. It's just done through the store. And this is what I run every day. And it's just Twitter, but guess what? I stripped everything out of it that I don't want on it. I mean, this extension has something like 40 or 50 options in it. And like you can even like change the icon for Twitter Blue subscribers. But so that works for desktop. So you can go read that how-to. I link it to this article. But this was for Android specifically, because I was like, wait, can I do this on my phone? Because it stinks, right? I use it on my desktop. It's great. I go to my phone. I'm getting the official experience. I found the solution. It worked brilliantly. And here's the best part is scrolling. And Zach, this is why you need to do it. Scrolling is better with this method. If you use the official Twitter app on Android, you probably know that scrolling can be janky. That is, you swipe it and then it stutters, That's just because whatever they coded with it. It's better on iOS, right? Because apps are always better on iOS. But by doing this method, you will get a beautiful Twitter experience that has none of the stuff you don't want. So what's the trick? Well, you need to download Firefox Beta from the Google Play Store. So it has to be the beta, because that version, Firefox supports extensions, but it's like the Samsung Galaxy browser. It only supports curated extensions. That is a pre-selected list of things you can choose from that are approved. So that doesn't help us. But the Firefox beta has a secret setting in it that allows you to install any extension. to do that, I give the directions, but you open Firefox beta and you go to the about page and you tap the Firefox logo 5 times. It's kind of like on Android, you know how to unlock the developer mode. And then that's going to give you advanced settings. And under there's a custom add-on collection setting. And then in there, you're going to punch in a code for the extension. I mean, you could go, I'm not going to read it here because it's a little annoying, but you punch in the extension in Android collection, and then this will import the extension to your device, to the browser. And now you'll have that, and you can go configure it how you want. So now you got it working in your Firefox beta browser on Android. You get the full experience. Cool. But who wants to go to Twitter in the browser on their phone, right? You want a standalone app. Well, that's, again, where PWAs come into the picture, because Firefox does allow you to create a PWA. So when you're on twitter.com, you just go into the settings menu and you scroll down and you'll see something that just says install, and it's going to create an icon on your desktop. It'll be a little Twitter icon with a little Firefox logo in the corner, but if you have an Android, you can change your icons, so you can get rid of that too. And it creates a standalone version of the Twitter webpage, the progressive web app. So there's no container. There's no border or anything like that. It literally looks like the official Twitter app. And if you're on Samsung, you can even get rid of the top white bar. It has to do with the camera cutout settings. I even tell you how to do that. And the result here is you're going to get a fully functioning Twitter app that's faster and smoother than the official one. And it's configured exactly how you want it. It shows the stuff you want to show. Like mine just shows for you. I don't get mine just shows in your feed and not the for you. I removed it. I even can hide retweets from people. Sometimes, you're scrolling, like, I don't care. Why are you retweeting that? I just want to see the things you write. So you can either put retweets in its own column, which actually is kind of fun. You can just scroll those up, or you can just get rid of them altogether. So this is it takes 5 minutes to do this. It's free. And I don't know why, if you use Twitter on mobile, why you wouldn't do this. I think the only thing is that you might not get notifications all the time, which should be fair, I think, okay. But you can keep the official Twitter app, installed to get notifications if you really want to do that and just not rely on it. So the article is called How to Block Twitters for You on Android and iOS for an Elon-free Twitter. I think it works brilliantly. Zach, let me ask you, did you try this? Because I know you didn't, but why?
No,
why didn't you try it?
I don't want to use extensions.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I know.
Why?
I know. I don't know. I'm just so against them. I only use, how many extensions do I have? I have 1, 2, 3 installed. And I don't even want one of them. I just have to have it there. I don't care about cookies extension, editor, and uBlock Origin because it's obviously necessary to have an ad blocker these days. But yes, that's why I use those, and I don't want anything else. And besides, I use TweetDeck, Dan. Come on, give it the times.
On your phone.
Oh, you can use. No, on my phone, I just use the main app. Yeah, I'm not bothered on my phone.
That's what I'm talking about. On your phone. I'm not talking about the desktop. I'm talking about on your phone.
Yeah.
Like, why would?
I prefer the app on my phone. That's why I like the.
Why? But this is the app. This is the app.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's no difference. There's no difference between the official app and the PWA version of the website. They're the same thing. It just runs better in my method.
I've got to install Firefox. I don't want to do that.
It took less than 5 minutes. Are you kidding me? Firefox does nothing if you don't ever launch it.
All right, I'll try it this weekend.
I can't see. Yeah, please try it. Come back next Friday, because I can't see in what world you would find this worse or negative to it. It's awesome. It just runs better. If you're on a high refresh display, like 120 hertz on your phone, you're going to love this because the scrolling is so much better. And actually, Firefox is, to be fair, a pretty damn good browser. For instance, you can move the address bar to the bottom.
High edge. Really? Wow. Windows phone users will love that.
I know. It's a pretty good browser. So I'm just saying, go try this. And technically, by the way, you can do this for, And if you run the AdBlock Pro extension, you also get rid of all the ads on Twitter.
Nice.
So it's just pure your feed, man. I'm telling you, it's wonderful. All right, go try that. We'll see you next week. Leave me a comment. Tell me on Twitter if you tried it and liked it. Let's quickly go through reviews. We're getting a little long here in the podcast due to Dan's stupid rants again, but we did have a bunch of reviews this week. And there we go. We did. Oh, the Dark Matter GT foldable racing wheel stand. This is hilarious. If you're into racing sims or truck driving sims, and you got one of them steering wheels, which that's a whole thing we cover here at Windows Central, thanks to Ben Wilson. This is a full-on stand with pedals and everything that you can like sit. It's like the people who build the little cockpits for a Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's like that for racing. It's cool though. So Dark Matter makes that. That's a mono price. If you don't, that's the parent company. So it's actually really affordable. So we had that. The Razer Death Adder 3 version 3 mouse. If you don't know, the Death Adder is Razer's pretty much their most popular gaming mouse. And this is their version 3, which just came out, and it's just one of the top ones. Gave it, it's just under $70. It's wired, that's why. It has no RGB. It's a straight up hardcore gaming mouse. 4.5 stars out of 5. Zachary Body reviewed that and went to a ton of detail. And they're actually a gamer, so take their word. Govi AI Gaming Sync Box Kit. Oh, what a great name that is. This is awesome. If you are a PC gamer, these are the lights that go behind the PC that sync to your video games or whatever content's on your display. Now, what they did this time, if you remember, Govi used to have like a camera that would protrude over the monitor, look down, and read the screen. That's fine. What's good about that method is it's affordable. It makes the price a lot cheaper. The downside about it is it's not as fast because now you're relying on optics to translate. The better way to do it is an HDMI intercept. You put a little box between your display and your video card, and it connects there and gets the signal directly. And so it's way faster. So it costs more. It's around $300, and you get a couple of you get the box and 2 poles basically with all the lights on it. But this thing works really, really well. So if you want immersive RGB color lighting while you game, this is your kit. That's the Govi AI game. Oh yeah, and it uses AI, of course, because it's in there. But it basically does things with certain video games to anticipate and is better suited for that. I love the Govi stuff. I mentioned before, I use them on all my TVs. I highly recommend, if you haven't got into RGB stuff yet, start with your TV. It's affordable. You can get it for, I think, under $100 in some cases, or $120. You put the lights on the back of your TV and just connect it right up, and your TV experience, it's going to be a million times better. I can't stand TVs that don't have backlighting anymore. I think it looks ridiculous. We also did the Razer Blade 18. Yeah, so this just was announced at CES. This is an absurd laptop. Now you can configure it in different levels. The one we reviewed was the RTX 4090. Jeez. It's an RTX 4090 with a 13th gen Intel Core i9 13950HX processor with 24 cores and 32 threads up to 5.5 gigahertz. And you can overclock that technically. And it's got vapor chamber cooling. It's a monster of a laptop. And I'm telling you, the 40 series in laptops is actually really, really impressive. And same thing with the 13th gen stuff. Like this is more powerful than most desktops are today, and it's all in an 18-inch laptop. Now that's a big laptop. Don't worry, there's a 16 gen which we're going to review very soon as well. But this thing just like it killed everything on all the top scores compared to every other gaming laptop. It's just it's a monster thing. So if you like Razer's famed design, make sure you go check out that review. That got 4.5 stars out of 5. That was also by Ben Wilson. And we reviewed the Alienware 720H dual mode wireless gaming headset. Rebecca Spear reviewed that. She gave it, although, 3.5 out of 5. Basically, this is the problem. We actually did an editorial about this. So, one, they're cool looking headphones. There's no doubt about it. Alienware does some really cool looking designs. And I believe they light up as well. But the audio coming out of them is really good, and they're comfortable. The downside, and this is a problem with a lot of these things, is the microphone. The microphone, she didn't love it. She basically says, and this is a wireless headset, gets good battery life, but she says the microphone was inconsistent, basically. And this is how you know we're fair. Dell reached out to us, and we're like, hey, we think maybe you got a bum unit. We're going to send you another one. And she really evaluated it, and she said the original review of the Alienware gaming headset was published on March 20th. but has been updated March 30th. After the initial review went live, Dell sent us a new headset, but it also proved to have inconsistent mic quality in our testing, so we didn't adjust our score. Sorry, Dell. So they got to work a little harder on the microphone stuff. Does have adjustable RGB lighting, good battery life, works with the Alienware Command Center and Dolby Atmos. Amazing high-res audio listening experience and extremely comfortable to wear. So if you just need something to use while you're gaming and you don't, I mean, if you talk to other people, it'll be fine. You can hear them. It's just the results can be kind of inconsistent. But if you're just gaming by yourself, these are totally fair. Let's see what the pricing on these guys are. I actually have the higher end version of these. Yeah, $160. So they're not cheap, but they do look cool. They're white and have a little glowing blue alien on them, which I'm always a big fan of. I think that about does it for reviews, except we'll get to Zach's discussion of the ThinkPad X13S running the ARM processor. I'm a big fan of this laptop. Now, Zach, this will be interesting because this is a ThinkPad. He doesn't have a ton of experiences with ThinkPads. Actually, how many ThinkPads have you tried in your life?
This one.
Yeah. So ThinkPads are, I love ThinkPads, and a lot of people love them. But if you're coming from just consumer laptops, it's a very different experience. I can already hear it because they're built for enterprise and for a different audience. But yeah, okay. So let's have it. What do you think?
Let's start with the design. I actually don't mind the design. I think it's a very nice looking laptop. When it's closed, it's gorgeous, which I realize doesn't mean much because it's it's when it closes, it's useless. Even when it's open, I think it doesn't look too bad. I've seen uglier ThinkPads, I will tell you that much. This is really not on the ugly side. I think it's quite nice looking, very contemporary. The only two complaints about the design I have, one is the material they use. I know they make a big deal about it being awesome and stuff, but my God, is it a fingerprint magnet? It is real fingerprinty.
Yeah, I will say though, that's the better version of that. They've actually, that's the newest version because they make the X1 Nano, which is basically a similar chassis, and it uses a different material on the outside and picks up even more fingerprints. Yeah. But yeah, all ThinkPads do that.
Okay, sure. Well, that's one of my complaints. The other one I have is, and I know this is a ThinkPad thing, and you can switch it, which I have done, but the function key and the control key in the right place. What are they doing? Yeah. Stop that! It's crazy.
So the reason this stuff doesn't change, but you're right. They give you a software ability to swap those. You just didn't have visually. You look down, you're like, wait, that's not control.
Yeah.
The reason they don't change that stuff is because ThinkPads are so popular and so ingrained in enterprise culture that they can't change that. It's just like Microsoft with Windows.
Yeah.
They change that stuff and people go ballistic. So I actually bought a couple years ago. I have it right here. It's the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. It's one of the few that they made in silver. So it doesn't have the fingerprint problem, and it looks awesome. And I've told them over and over again how cool it was. And they only made it for one generation. I got classic IBM stickers. It even has a 4G in it. I was like, this is going to be the one laptop I use. Of course, that didn't last. But they tried it. It didn't sell. That's why I only did it one generation. So I'm with you on the black and the fingerprint stuff. I'm telling you though, the people who buy ThinkPads do not care. And if you give them the option for a silver version, they're like, no, gross. That ain't a ThinkPad. So it's tough. And same with the track point system. I want to burn that to the ground, but they can't get rid of it. And the guy in charge right now apparently is like, we'll never get rid of it. Same with the keys. They tried to change the function keys years ago. The top row, they tried to make them digital and electric. People revolted. They did it for one generation. That was it. So they have tried to make things more modern and normal, and the audience revolts. You know, so Zach, this comes down to the you're not the target audience.
Yeah, no, totally, and I totally see, and that's why they have the yoga line, right? And they have other lines, so they can do other designs and not get told off for it. But I will say I'm not a huge fan of 1080p displays, but this one's great. I actually have no issues with this one. It looks really nice. The only issues I really have is just stuff Windows does. Windows defaults to 150% scaling on this screen, which is way too big. By default, everything's way too big on this laptop. You need to drop it to, sadly, 125, which isn't a nice scaling percentage for Windows, but it's better than having everything so massive at 150. And then the other issues I have with it really are just to do with Windows and ARM. Windows and ARM is such a weird, I don't know, it works fine, I guess, but I come across so many weird issues with Windows and ARM all the time. This happened with the Windows and ARM dev kit. It happened with the Pro 9 5G that I had briefly. It's all kinds of things that I have. For example, and it's happening on this one as well, and you saw this earlier in the week, Dan, I complained about it. My clock is just 20 minutes ahead for some reason.
Oh, I didn't know that was on that device. device.
No, that's on
Okay.
ARM. That's Windows and ARM. Yeah, on everything else, it's just fine. But on Windows and ARM here, it's 20 minutes ahead until I go into settings and sync it. Every time I put the computer to sleep and wake it up again, the time is just 20 minutes ahead, and I don't understand. I don't know
I
why.
definitely never had that.
I don't know
issue.
why. And then the other thing is, what else have I had issues with? Obviously, in the past, and this was the Volterra. I've not tried this laptop yet, but I suspect it has the same problem where if I dock it to a HDR monitor, the colors on the HDR monitor are all over the place. I'll definitely update next week on whether that's still an issue with this thing. I'm pretty sure it is, though. And then also, and this is a thing I've complained about with just in general, really. I always like to see out of box on a Windows and ARM laptop how many pre-installed services are natively ARM, because I would think the goal is to have out of box everything is Windows and ARM, and then everything you install after that is fair game. But on this laptop, there's Lenovo's Vantage thing is still emulated, and there's an ELAN service that's still emulated and stuff. It's not. It could be worse for sure, but there's a few things out of box that are still being emulated, which is okay, I guess. It's not obviously the worst part about emulation on Windows and ARM is Electron apps. For example, WhatsApp. The new WhatsApp is emulated on ARM, but because it's using not Electron, it's actually fine. You can't tell it's being emulated. Whereas Slack, for example, absolutely terrible, and everybody should use the web app instead on Windows and ARM, because Slack.exe is a god awful experience on Windows on ARM. What was the other thing I wanted to complain about? It was I don't remember now. Okay, no, we'll go back to the good stuff about the hardware. I love the fact that it's got both fingerprint and face. That's amazing. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it also does that thing where when you press the power button, it remembers your fingerprint through the boot process, and it can boot you straight into Windows, which is amazing. And the keyboard's nice as well. I think it's a nicely sized keyboard. It's very tactile. It's very nice to click on. And so basically, and also this is the first laptop I've ever had with the reverse notch. I thought I would hate it, but I don't. I think it's actually fine.
Oh, no, it's great. Yeah, and they're able to put a good camera into it.
Yeah, the camera's really good. Yeah, you're right. And it has, since it's a Snapdragon 860 Gen 3, it has Windows Studio effects, so it gets all enhanced with all that cool stuff as well. And the battery life so far, I've only had it for a few days, but it's also very good as well. It charges really quickly, and I think I'm very interested.
No fans, doesn't get hot.
No, it knows. Well, it got hot during the update process, which is what Windows
of course.
does. Windows gets hot during updates.
Yeah, that does.
I mean, other than that, it's fine.
I'm always like that with laptop reviews. I'm always like, you won't hear the fans unless you do a Windows update, but that doesn't count. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. I think it's great. I will be I'm going to review it, and I will review it fairly as for its target audience. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's ugly, it doesn't have this, it's not touchscreen, because that's not what this device is.
What's with all this business software on here?
Yeah, why is there business here? Yeah. No, but I will be very interested to. This has been out for a while now. It's not even that new on the market, but
you can get it pretty cheap, I think, too, on eBay and stuff. So
I'm curious to see how enterprise customers have handled this device, because obviously it being Windows and ARM, is that a showstopper for lots of people, or is it not now?
It's not. So I wrote about this when it was first announced. The reason why this is a big deal is the first ThinkPad with ARM. So it's like it took them a while to bring ARM to their prestige business line, and it's an X1, so it's like that's their top tier kind of stuff. So to get there, they had to work for years with Microsoft and other partners to get the security up to their standards, because that's what the ThinkPads and enterprise laptops have. That's their focus. It's special security when it comes to the hardware and the ability to control things and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of that wasn't ready for ARM or optimized for, and they were able to do that now. I don't know how it's selling. I don't think it's like sold huge, but I can, I mentioned last week on the podcast, the person that's like basically in charge of the ThinkPads or the designs, all that is all in on ARM.
Yeah.
But they acknowledge it's a work in progress, and it's, but he uses it. He uses Tom Butler. Yeah. I actually interviewed him on our YouTube channel. He actually uses this device all the time. That's his main travel laptop. It's one of my main travel laptops. In fact, when we were talking about it yesterday, I was at the Tesla dealership. I was using the ThinkPad X13s because it's so tiny and small, and I knew I didn't need to bring a charger. And for me, as information work, it's all the horsepower I need. I don't use it and feel like things are slow when I'm running it. I'm running Edge, I'm running Slack as a PWA. All my stuff is PWAs. I don't have any problems with it, and I have the 5G built in, which I find extremely helpful as well. So
It is a real shame that Slack still hasn't got an ARM version of their app, because it is, I think, it must be a super popular app amongst enterprise users. So I would imagine a lot of people using this are probably using the Slack app without the knowledge that there's even a web app for them to install, because
yeah,
Slack doesn't make it obvious that that's what you can do. So that, I think, is a real
the
shame.
problem is I think it's their app is probably like what Teams was, where
Yeah,
it's
it's
built off a
raw.
couple technologies, and
Yeah.
it's like gaming, right? You can't just convert one piece. Although, some of the new Microsoft technology allows them, but yeah, there's probably not a huge audience there. But that's why if you just go to slack.com, log in, install as a PWA, just use that. And I find that I do that like on my Intel devices, because like
Yeah.
why would I want to, like, Electron's not awesome on Intel either, so it's there. But yeah, that's just a Slack kind of
I
thing.
also just want to
And yeah,
mention, and
yeah,
I know this is a ThinkPad thing, but the little eye on the ThinkPad logo lights up and it flashes when the
yeah.
device is asleep. I think that's cool, but I feel like I wish it would only do that when there was like missed notifications, because it is always connected, right? Like it should still be getting notifications for like mail and stuff when it's closed. That would be cool as a notification light, but instead it's just I'm asleep light, and it's like, I know you're asleep, the lid's closed.
Yeah, I think that also means it's in its ready state. It's not in a full
Sure.
hibernation.
Yeah, yeah. Which
Again,
it does hibernate eventually, doesn't it? Because Windows
yeah,
just
of
does that.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's another legacy feature that I think they
Sure.
changed. It would confuse people
From
and
the
all that kind of stuff.
90s.
Yeah, and they do, like, listen, they got the ThinkPad now has the Z line, which is the Z line is a more, you would probably like the Z series more. It still has a track point and all that kind of stuff, but it's built for the millennials basically who need to have a ThinkPad.
Yeah.
So it has all the same security stuff, but it's much more modern design, and they're allowed to sort of break free from the traditional like X series kind of stuff. But this was meant for the traditional enterprise. I love this device. I think it's one of my favorites. I said this before. I go between this and the Dragonfly are my two favorite laptops to work on, especially when I have to travel. But it's always interesting to hear someone else's perspective on it. But I mean, in terms of running apps, like, have you had really any other, like, you haven't had any compatibility issues and things not run, right?
No, the only thing that's happened, and I think this is the developer's fault, but Unigram crashes on it. It just won't run, and I think it's just an issue of the latest version of Unigram. But that's a perfect example of developers not treating Windows and ARM equally, right? They compiled a version for ARM, but it doesn't work.
Of course, everybody listening to this is like, what's Unigram?
Oh, Unigram's the better Telegram
I know.
client for Windows. That's what it is.
I disagree. It's better, but it is a UWP client for.
I tell you, it's better if you want your app to look like a Windows 11 app, then Unigram's better, because it uses like
I get
design
that.
stuff. Yeah. And it's lighter, and it does the thing where even when it's closed, you still get notifications, which is kind of what I dream to have.
So, I run the Telegram, just the normal app.
Yeah.
I run that, but you can do Telegram web app.
Actually, the web app's really good. I'm actually using the web app on here because Unigram's not working, and I'm always pleasantly surprised by how good the Telegram web app is. Same with Instagram. Instagram's web app is amazing now. And I'm surprised they've not just put that on iPad as the iPad app, because the way it scales on an iPad, for example, is amazing, and on Windows as well. It just works so well. I'm so surprised by how good it is.
Yeah. More people need to use. It was funny. My SO, she was at work, and I've been telling her about Outlook, a new Outlook. I'm like, because they need to upgrade and all this, and the new version. I'm like, just install the PWA. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, if you go to Outlook and like install, and she did it. She had no idea what I was talking about, and then she did it. She came home. She's like, I get it now. I get what you're talking about. And she's like, it works great. And I'm like, yeah, like IT doesn't need to get involved. It's just like it takes seconds. And she's like, her boss was asking how to do it and all this kind of stuff. I'm like spreading the magic. I'm like, yeah, you don't need to get IT to approve to install a new executable. Like it works brilliantly. Like, why would you not? I don't know why people don't use web apps. I think it's mostly because the process, and sounds weird, but once you go down that road, man,
it's also a mindset change. I think it's not just the idea. You need to know about it, one, but two, you have the mindset of, I'm going to use the web app instead. Because even though we're saying like web apps are basically on par with legacy apps, even in my head, I still think that they're a lesser experience, even though in a lot of the cases it's not even true. The other thing I complain, like, Slack doesn't do that thing where it prompts an install. You can manually install it as an app, but it still doesn't have that thing where it's like, hey, I'm a web app, would you like to install me as a web app? They seem to just disable that on slack.com, which I wonder if they do it on purpose. I bet they do. I bet they want you to use the stupid slow
Notifications
app.
work great on it though. Like I've
Yeah, they
had
do.
never an issue with it
Yeah.
failing at all. But yeah, I mean when people are like, I mean, there's a YouTube app for Windows. I use it every day. There's a YouTube TV app for Windows. There's Google Maps for Windows. It's all there. You just gotta use the PWA version. You can make Gmail as a PWA. Like all these all of Microsoft's websites and services are PWAs. Like you can do that. Like they're fast, they're light. You don't need to install stuff. There's no security concerns. Like I mean and they keep getting better. If you go into Edge and you type in PWA and you look through the flags, you can enable a bunch of features that you can tell that they're working on. There's actually a version that's kind of cool. I don't know if you know about this one, Zach. If you go into flags, I think I forgot which version it is for PWA. There's a thing you can enable where if you install the PWA from the web, but then a version comes out in the Microsoft Store at some point, it will eventually switch over.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and that's what actually happened with the Outlook app. It eventually
Yeah.
switched over to the store version, which was kind
Right.
of cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, I've got one more complaint about the hardware on this ThinkPad X13s. The lid is not a one-hand openable lid. Why is that? That can't be a legacy thing. Like, surely they're not complaining that you can open it with one
I
hand.
think it's too small and light. There's just not enough mass
Oh,
in that
maybe,
thing.
yeah. Maybe. But yeah, it doesn't. It's
And
a
that-
two-hander to open.
Yeah. Granite State Collins says the PWs don't support the badge and the taskbar, do they? They sure do.
Yeah, they do. They should do. Yeah, if you enable notifications through the web app,
Yep.
it will badge on the taskbar if you have a missed notification.
Yep. No, I'm telling you, it's like it's getting better. I also understand Microsoft is probably holding back a little bit because PWs are a work in progress. So they're not there yet for a lot of people. Although I've never really run into any limitations either, but some just work better than others. So, but yeah, it's all cool stuff. All right. I guess we'll do quickly a thing of the week. I know this podcast is going a little bit long, but I just have a couple things. I did watch 4 movies over the last couple of weeks.
God.
I finally remembered. Yeah, amazing, right? Well, one of them was Megan. I already talked about that. Highly recommend it. Hilarious. It reminded me of a classic 80s kind of movies, which was kind of, especially the way it ends and stuff like that, was just very 80s. And someone who grew up in the 80s, I really appreciated that. It was a fun story, though. It was just done well. Hilarious. I know they're going to continue with it. How they do that will be kind of interesting. So, but I highly recommend that. I saw Smile also, which came out last year. It's the one with the creepy poster and everybody smiling. And you saw probably the trailer, which is people with this weird grin. Really good movie. It went maybe a little 20 minutes too long. And there's a lot of jump scares that maybe were a little overdone. But like the last 20 minutes is so cool. And it's just a really neat story. It was a very original one. And it was like kind of done off of the director did like a student film or something like that, some kind of short that was screened at some festivals, and I forgot it was Paramount, I think it was, saw it and basically were like, make a full movie out of that. And technically, this is a sequel to that, which is kind of interesting. I haven't seen the original though, but it's a fun movie. In the way, like the thing at the end, like the way they did it, I was just like, wow, that was really cool looking, like graphics and design. And the horror in it was pretty good. I was like pretty impressed with them. It was a cool story though. Highly recommend Smile. Going way back in time, I saw Village of the Damned. I believe it was 1960, black and white film. I was telling Zach about this before the podcast. Awesome story. Based on a short story called, I think, The Cuckoos of Midwich, I think it was. So this was this British or, English town. All of a sudden, like, it starts off, how do I describe it? No one can enter the town. All the people fall asleep in the town. They all just pass out, and anybody who tries to enter the town can't. As soon as they walk past it, they collapse, and they look like everybody's dead. And then all the people wake up, and they're technically all fine, except all the women in the town are now pregnant. So, like, okay. And a couple months later, they all give birth, not even the full 9 months, and all the children have blonde hair, and they have, let's just say, powers. And then the story is about how to react. It's a cool story. It reminds me very much of a Twilight Zone episode, just a little bit longer. It was 90 minutes. They did make a sequel to it called Children of the Damned, which I heard is not as good, but I'm still going to watch it anyway because I heard it's still kind of interesting. But yeah, Village of the Damned. You can go watch that on HBO Max. Highly recommend that. And then I watched a movie that's on Hulu called Hatched, which came out, I think, 2022 as well. That's another weird one. That's Swedish, I want to say. maybe Dutch. I don't know. It's one of the Scandinavian countries. Sorry, guys. Weird story. Let's say there's a family. There's a young girl who's like a gymnast. There's a bird, dies. There's an egg. She takes the egg, raises the egg. The egg gets bigger, hatches a thing, and then that's the story. It's cool. It's got some creepy horror in it. It's one of those that you get to the end of the movie and you're just like, all right, well that was different. I'm not saying it's amazing, but it was a solid B plus. It was definitely a different film. So if you're into, yeah, so Hatched, Village of the Damned, Megan, and Smile, all highly recommended. Zach, you got anything you want to contribute?
Well, yeah, I watched a one season show on Netflix this week, and it didn't get a season two, and it kind of ends with they're suggesting there could be a season two, so don't watch it if you will be annoyed at that. But it was called Turn Up Charlie. It was like a comedy drama, feel good TV show about a guy starring Idris Elba, who is trying. He was like he had one big hit in the '90s, like a house tune or whatnot. And he's, in the DJ scene and stuff, and he's trying to make a comeback. And so he's friends with this other DJ who's like super popular now, and they become friends and stuff. It's okay. I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed it. It's a good sort of, each episode only 30 minutes, so it's an easy show to binge and just have it on. And yeah, I thought it was very funny. I laughed at it quite a lot.
Nice. Well, sorry it didn't get continued. That's the way I was annoyed. That's like that. Yeah, that's always frustrating. Seems to happen more often than not these days, but there you go. All right, we'll do Q&A with the audience now. So if you're listening to this live, please fire off about anything we did talk about or things we didn't talk about. We'll do our best to answer them. If you don't get to listen to that on the recorded part, but you can join us every Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel where we do the live video broadcast and have the audience chatting with us. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. I also know if you're on Mastodon, apparently our tweets aren't going through. I'll try to solve that again. I thought I did, but something's still not working there. I'll try to figure it out, so stay tuned for that. Apologies if you're on Mastodon and haven't been seeing all our stories there. I am on Mastodon too as well, which is basically just, I do retweet a lot of, or the stuff from Twitter just goes there automatically, but I do pay attention to Mastodon, so if you do message me, I will get it and respond to you there as well. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Wicked. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. We'll hang around for a few minutes and do our best to provide answers. If there are no questions, then I'm going to go.
It's Friday night.
20 past 8 on a Friday night. Oops. Or is it 40 past 8? Because my bloody clock is 20 minutes ahead.
Yeah, that is weird.
It's strange, isn't it?
And you ran the updates in Vantage?
Yeah, I've done it. It's all up to date. It's just, I think Windows and ARM has a bug right now.
Just your Windows and ARM?
Just my Windows and ARM, apparently, yeah. Do you think Microsoft would talk about Core PC before Windows 12 announcements? Also, are there any plans regarding upgrade path from legacy Windows to Core PC? Will there be a new installer? Quite a few questions there. So the answer to the first question about it being announced before Windows 12, I think the answer is no. I also don't know if they're going to actually announce Core PC as a thing. They didn't really announce Core OS as a thing. They just started announcing products on top of Core OS, like 10X. So I don't think we will see any Core PC stuff until probably the end of next year, even after the Windows 11 announcement. They'll probably announce... I say that. They could announce it alongside Windows 12. I don't know. But yeah, I would not expect to hear anything before they're ready to announce the next version of Windows, at least. The second part of your question, are there any plans to provide an upgrade path from legacy Windows to Core PC? So... as far as I'm aware, no. The answer, Core PC will only ship on new PCs because it's just easier. That said, there has apparently been work done internally that suggests that they were at least thinking about an upgrade path. But but I don't think it's going to ship. It's really difficult to convert a live or an already running install of Windows to something that's state separated, because what do you do with all the files that aren't stored in the usual place? What if you're storing files in the root of the C drive, or for some reason you're storing them in the System32 folder? I don't know, maybe you're doing something like that. Or what about programs that are already installed and already hooking into those areas that are going to become read-only? What happens to those apps, right? There's so many variables and questions there that I don't think a direct upgrade path is a viable thing for most PC users. And so that's why I don't think they're going to ship Core PC as an update for existing PCs. Also, that your last question there mentioning will there be a new installer? No. Well, technically no. You can't just install Core PC onto anything you want. It applies itself via FFU images, similar to Windows phones, how they used to do it.
Whoa, language.
And how Windows 10X did it. So if you tried to install Windows 10X on a actual PC, you were probably aware of how difficult that is. It's not as simple as just burning a USB key. Burning a USB key? It's not a thing. You know what I mean? Sticking the install files on the USB key and being done with it. There's a whole process behind applying that FFU image, or creating the FFU image and then applying it to a system. So that will be the case for Core PC as well. Maybe my Intel PC is behind. Well, my Intel PC and the rest of the world is probably behind my Windows and ARM clock then. Because, yeah. Were the Office apps on the Light Core PC SKU PWA? No, not to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be the full Win32 apps. Will Bing Chat GPT have plugins at some point? I don't know. They announced that for Chat GPT, didn't they? And I don't...
Yep.
I don't...
Oh, there's something deeper about this. Actually, I forgot. I want to write an article about this. We should talk about that on the podcast. There's a new paper that was published apparently by Microsoft researchers, and I forgot what they're calling it. They're coming out with a system, as I mentioned, with full AI, and we should talk about this on the next podcast. So large language models, LLMs, are just a part of what's called, what should be full AI. That's why we laugh at it, because a large language model is not that. And the problem is there's all these purpose-specific AIs and systems that are built out there that do specific things. For instance, large language models, as a lot of people have discovered, are not very good at complicated math. So that's been tweeted a lot about. But there are AI systems that do that. So the question is, how do you make something like Bing Chat better? Do you just build everything into it? And make it more complicated? Well, the problem there is the systems that are making what Bing Chat are compatible with the same ones that do, say, advanced math or everything else. Even the the image generation is not done by Bing Chat, right? It's interfacing with DALL-E. DALL-E is the system there, right? Well, that should kind of give you a cue. So what they're proposed, and they say it's in the works, and it's apparently going to come out not too distant future, is an API system that allows various AIs to then communicate between each other. So then Bing Chat would be able to link up to these other purpose-built AIs and link, and then it'll be seemingly almost like a human brain would work then. This is the idea of like what's called discrete localized functions in the brain. They used to think that you have specific areas in the brains for specific things like vision. To a certain extent, it's true, but it's not as specific as they thought it would be. But it's kind of a similar concept here, where then you imagine you take a bunch of AIs and they can all link and talk to each other, and then becomes a very much more powerful AI, right? So that's what I suspect with the plugin thing. And what ChatGPT did is kind of going down that route, I think. But I think the Microsoft version is supposed to be a lot more advanced. So
probably hard to answer, but if Microsoft has the ability to leave out Win32 on Core PC, wouldn't it make sense to have a XAML-based window composer and shell? Perhaps. I don't actually know what the plan is there regarding the shell for the low-end or the lighter version of Windows that they're building. My assumption is they would want to make it as universal as possible, so if they can reuse work from the other composer for normal Core PC or whatever they're going to call it, then I'm sure they'd rather do that than build an entirely new shell. That said, I don't know. They could entirely probably do that if they were wanted to do it, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess. If Core PC becomes Windows 12, then what's the way forward for people to have to install Windows themselves? Sorry, let me reread that. If Core PC becomes Windows 12, then what's the way forward if people have to install Windows themselves? Well, legacy Windows Desktop isn't going away. This is the same story as it was with Windows 10 and Windows 10X. The version of Windows you run today will continue to be a product that Microsoft sells and updates. So you will get Windows 12, air quotes Windows 12, on legacy Windows Desktop. Like, there's no way legacy PCs are stuck on Windows 11. Well, I say that. I guess. Well, we'll see. I think. I guess. But no, they will still continue to update legacy desktop for many years to come. It won't be going away because it's still necessary for things like gaming PCs and whatnot.
Mo Akram asks, do I think a Surface Pro 9 with 8 gig of RAM, which is going on sale, basically has some cheap deals, is fine for general office, edge, browsing, and WPA? Yes. I have no problems running devices with 8 gigs of RAM. I've run ARM devices with 4 gigs of RAM before. 8 gigs is fine. I couldn't even tell you with the stuff I do. If you gave me a device with 8 or 16 gigs, it told me to tell you which is. I don't think I could. I'd never noticed the difference between with the stuff I do. I just don't. I feel like Windows 11 is just very good at memory management, and it's very much relative. If it has 8 gigabytes, it knows what to do with that. It never really runs out. But again, it's relative, right? If you're running giant video games or super complicated apps, but I run Photoshop Elements on ARM devices, and if it's fine. I guess that would be you'd want more RAM for, of course. But if what you're doing, I think 8 gigs is fine. I don't know, Zach. What do you feel about that?
No, I agree. 8 gigs for that sort of workload is okay. You only really want more than 8 gigs if you are planning to multitask with software that is quite resource intensive. If you're only switching between Office and Edge, more or less, that's what you said, right? You may have 20 tabs open in Edge, but you're still only really switching between 2 apps. I think you will be fine. It's only really useful if you're going to be, for example, like for my workload here, I could probably work off this workload with 16 gigs. I have 32 because that's what the laptop came with. But I have Edge open, for example. I also have XSplit open for streaming. I have
you got 32 gigs in the X13?
No, sorry. This is the Surface Laptop Studio for the stream.
No,
I'm streaming from the X13. Yes. So I have XSplit running, and then I have our sound recorder app running, and then I have Edge running so I can see the chat stuff and all of my notes for the different websites. That probably requires more than 8 gigs of RAM because that's quite intensive. But if you're just using Office and Edge, 8 gigs should be plenty.
And he says WPA. I think he means PWA, but yeah, especially if you're running PWAs.
Yeah, because that's just more Edge tabs technically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd be totally fine. I have no problem recommending that. Yeah, it'd be good.
So Core PC cannot be installed in the legacy shared state mode, not to my knowledge, and I don't see the point of doing that because it will. Half of the benefits of half of the platform innovations through Core PC is from the fact it's state separated, than being shared state.
Why does Twitter and Reddit communities hate Windows 11? In my office, and with regular people, they think it's prettier Windows and move on. Well, as you mentioned, regular people. People who go on Twitter and Reddit aren't regular people. That's not an insult. A lot of them are power users. A lot of them are designers. A lot of them are engineers. A lot of them are programmers. A lot of them are enthusiasts. And that's a small, tiny 1%, even less segment of the population that uses this technology. They know things, they talk about things, it's a hobby for them. So they're going to be much more critical. There's also this well-known thing that if you really, really like something, you're just happy with it, you rarely go out into the world and tell people about it. No one, like, even with airlines, right? If you go on Twitter, what does everybody do with airlines? They complain when something is wrong, right? Oh my God, Delta, I just had a terrible flight. You're awful, blah, blah, blah. When was the last time you saw someone go, I just flew Delta and it was a jolly experience. I really like this airline. No one really does that, right? It's more fun to vent and rage. And so you find more negativity on the internet. It's just more fun to kind of do that than be like, no, you know what? I like it. And that's kind of the end of the story, right? So I think that's why that is. But yeah, if you're right, I think that's the important thing here. It's something Zach and I try to do. Yeah, talk to regular people. You know, I have a lot of my friends know nothing about tech, know nothing about my job, and do not care. And I love asking them questions about that stuff, you know, because you ask, like I said this years ago, like I asked my friends, like, what version of Android you're running? No idea. No idea. Do not care at all. They'll have a phone that's 3 years old. Do not care. It takes photos. It does what they need to do, right? To an enthusiast, that sounds absurd. Who's like, yeah, but I need Android 13 now. It's like, why? Why do you need Android 13? You know? So there you go.
Is the weird bezel thing in Edge Canary the plan for future Edge? What are your thoughts on it? Yeah, I mean, it will probably ship. That is their new sort of design where websites are now surrounded by a thin bezel within the app. I'm not a huge fan of that design, personally. I know Dan does like it. To my knowledge, they are going to allow you to turn it off. So if you don't like it, you can go into settings and disable it, and you can get back those pixels.
I think
yeah, no,
awesome.
I'm pretty sure it will ship.
Rounded corners everywhere. Speaking of, I'm updating my Edge Canary. I don't use Edge Canary regularly. I probably should, but it's you gotta switch between everything all the time.
All right, last call for questions. If there are no more questions, we will be heading off. Why is Microsoft slow/reluctant to add dark mode for being on desktop? I believe I read that they are testing it, and it's like available in A/B testing for a very small group of users. But it is coming. They said it's a goal, and it
I
will
have
ship
dark
eventually.
mode.
On Bing desktop.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Dan has it. I do not have it. So.
I think, and we're talking about the little Bing button when you hover over it and the chat comes out.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. Is it dark mode for you? It's not dark mode for me.
Yeah, here, I'll send you a screenshot. I mean, I do remember it went from not that to that for me, but yeah, mine's dark
Oh,
mode.
yeah, that's in the sidebar. What about Bing.com?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, Bing.com is probably still white mode
Let's
for
see.
you. You might have it. Like I
Okay.
said, it's apparently an early, like, small A/B testing.
Chat. No, I have the bright
Yeah.
screen. Yeah.
But they are working on it. It is coming.
Yeah.
Will Surface devices still exist with non-core PC variants? That's a great question. I don't know. Honestly, probably not. Although I think how it will probably be is just like how new Surface PCs ship with Windows 11, but you have every right to downgrade to Windows 10, and they still provide Windows 10 drivers. It will probably be that it will ship with Core PC, but if you want to install legacy Windows, that'll be an option that you can do through, I don't know, disabling secure. Actually, I genuinely don't know because Core PC will have different security model. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a case of the for business edition of Surface has legacy Windows, and then the normal one has modern Windows.
There was one. Oh, yeah. Someone's asking. Where was it? Oh no. Has anyone? Oh, anyone has an idea when Bing Chat GPT will work in Chrome? No, but we published an article about a plugin or an extension, I should say, that does allow you to do that. Let's see if I can bring up the article. Yes, if you just type it, it's called "These Simple Extensions Unlock Bing Chat AI for Any Web Browser." I'll drop the link into the chat here. And apparently you can do this, and there you go.
All right, that's probably about it for today. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We will be back next Thursday, not Friday next week. Friday is a holiday here in the UK. So we'll be back next Thursday at the usual time. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. But until then, we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.